Good
My
afternoon.
favorite. Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I am well. How are you?
I think today is Monday, although the days seem to all run together these days.
They do. It's interesting. I thought it was just me.
No, I think it's a phenomenon most of us are experiencing. So, may I ask you please to tell us your name and share a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Raquel Newton. I am related to Dr. Rochelle Newton.
Copycat.
I am originally from Detroit, Michigan. I am, how old am I? 47.
Wow, I would never say that number in public because
Why?
only 19.
You 19?
I'm older than you,
Just a little bit, though.
a whole lot, a whole lot.
Just me, you're not.
Okay.
Um, Let me see. Youth mentor, jewelry designer. Um, I left off business development when I was speaking before. That is what I've been doing for the last 17 years, I believe, 18 years. Um, Author, and that's all. That's all I got right now.
Okay, I accept whatever you have. So, you grew up in Detroit
I did.
and you were there for most of your adult life until very recently, correct?
Until about 5 years ago, I made the move completely away from Detroit.
What is
So
Detroit like? So we hear all the stories, Flint, you don't have good water, there's a lot of crime. Is that really the true picture of Detroit, or is that just a spin that the media has put on that city?
well, um, it's a combination of the two. Um, they rarely highlight the good in Detroit. Uh, there is some there is, so let's not negate that ever, right? But Detroiters don't have the best view of themselves by and large. Um, I was speaking of when I was flying in and out, like, traveling. When I would come into Detroit, I would see that haze around the city um, as we were coming in for landing, and it was just interesting to see. And while it is pretty much invisible from the ground, you get that sense that you can almost see that same hazy shadow type thing, in quite a few of the people there, you know? And so what living there, I've always said this, it's not as bad as they paint it. I was born on the east side, but I've worked everywhere. I've worked in construction where I'm in the field, I'm on the ground. While I've encountered some crazy stuff, nothing has gone significantly, awry. Um, the majority of the police in Detroit are not that bad. You do have some, who are awful. Now, the young people, having worked with them, I understand why they behave the way that they do. Um, they don't see any value in themselves. They don't have a sense of self-worth. And so not having that, creates an atmosphere where you can't value someone else if you don't value you. And that's what we see a lot of. And then when you step back and you start talking with their parents, you begin to recognize that it started from them, and then when you hear their stories, you realize it started from them. So we're dealing with um, a very lengthy generational sense of low value, you know. That is the hard part to break through, especially for the young people. So when I'm working with them, that's where I begin. Tell me how you feel about you, because I know that Everything else is sitting on top of that foundation. And it's sometimes heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
You know, it can be very hard to accept that someone that you can literally see so many gifts and talents and you know, such kindness and sweetness is they don't have any awareness of any good parts of themselves.
Why is
You know?
that? Did it start in education? Did it start at home? Why is it?
Oh, it starts at home. Always, it starts at home. Living in a position of duress for so long, um, the parent loses hope, right? And you can't impart something that you don't have. So that hopelessness transfers. And I know there was a thing when I was growing up, when I was like in my early to late teens, where it's like you don't cross 8 Mile. So people heard about 8 Mile with Eminem and all that stuff, right? But what people don't realize is on the east side of Detroit, which is where I grew up, and actually, yeah, it runs all the way down. So 8 Mile is the separation between Detroit um, and the suburbs. It literally runs right up the path. So when you're driving along 8 Mile, as you're traversing, if you turn right, you're going into the suburbs. If you turn left, you're going into the city, the neighborhoods. So a lot of the people that I knew, they were just like, oh, we don't go across 8 Mile. And so I never understood it. Most of the jobs that I had, most of my work was across 8 Mile. It is just like I'm lost. Like, what's the big deal, you know? But there was this stigma that they carried for themselves that said, you know, we're not good enough to go over there, or that we would be harassed by the police, or whatever stories that they told themselves. It was convincing enough that it passed down through, I mean, like the majority of the people that I knew. And it was just crazy, you know? But again, that's that root in self-hatred and self and not having any value of self. It's just like, well, I'm not worthy of going somewhere outside of the neighborhood. And there were so many people who never left, who never, when I say left, I don't mean permanently. I mean never even traveled, never would
Other parts
go.
to other neighborhoods in Detroit.
Precisely.
And so,
Just
go ahead.
just it was the confines. And so what you end up doing is you create this as your world. Like your entire world consists of a 4 to 5 block radius, and all you see in that, because everybody has that same mindset, is desolation.
And so, is there some correlation to that, to what we know as institutional and systematic racism, or is it because the education system failed even the parents? What is it, an economic, what is the underlying reason why that's the case, why people are unwilling or afraid to move beyond their immediate space?
Okay. So years ago started researching, right? And this is something that I found out. You remember hearing about the Detroit riot in '67, right? So it was said on TV. So the way the riot actually started, which is what they will not share, is that it was said that some black men um, raped a white woman, and on the flip side of that, some white men kidnapped and murdered a black child. This caused a collision of the forces. Well, they said that Detroiters began to riot and tear up their own things. They tore up the city in which they live. Well, Detroiters don't own tanks. Tanks were running through the city, literally shooting. You had police, you had white people, you had all these people who came in to destroy the city. But the news, the media portrayed it as Detroiters destroying their own. And that was regurgitated so much that Detroiters began to think, although they were there and saw it, this is the power of media and us taking nonsense into our ear gates and eye gates, right? We began to buy into the story and we began to live that way. That was the root of it.
Yeah. I have a very dear friend. He was in law school. He graduated last year, and he's in Detroit now. And dear fellow. And he and I were having a discussion about Detroit. And he said, property values throughout most of Detroit is beyond anything anywhere else. Like you could buy a 4 or 5 bedroom house that's a shell. It's not a house anymore. It's just a shell, like $8, $9, $10, $11,000. He said, that everything is so much. You have, what back in the day were called ghettos, but neighborhoods where the poverty level was so high that nobody wanted the property in those neighborhoods. And if you don't have an economy and a marketplace there, you can't have life there. And so what you're describing to me sounds very much like that is the case. And it sounds like, the person that is the president right now called Baltimore this horrible name. And I've heard people say the same thing about Detroit. Like it's just a place where no one wants to go, and you have to know, growing up there, that eventually people are going to regentrify Detroit, right? People are going to come in.
It started.
Yeah.
It started heavily now. It started just before I left. So this is good. This is really good. So the mayor, he's a white man. He used to run the DMC, which he ran into the ground, right? But because he wasn't Black, and we know how they vilified Kwame Kilpatrick, who was really, honestly, he was really building up the city because that's where he was from and he believed in it. Okay. What Kwame did was nothing different. In fact, it was actually less than the stuff that's happening now with the current Mayor Duggan, who is trash. Just to be quite honest. Okay. So he does not live in the city. He never has. He worked for DMC. He actually ran DMC. It was a very, very, one of the best hospitals in the state before he got there. And when he left, one of the worst. No money, almost pretty much bankrupt. But because he didn't look like us and he claimed he wouldn't take a salary, right? He didn't need it, blah, blah, blah. The city, the residents voted him in. Well, what they didn't realize is that the gentleman who runs Quicken Loans, and I always conveniently forget his name, he was backing him, right? And so what we ended up noticing is that that particular gentleman owns the majority of downtown. He not only owns the majority of downtown, but he also buys out
Dan Gilbert.
That's him. I conveniently, I don't know why, I just do. So he was backing him. And with all that money, who needs Detroit's little salary, right? So now he owns the entire city for the most part. I mean, it was done in such a way that, it was quite blatant to me. But a lot of folks missed it, right? And so they came in and we doing this, that, and the other. Now, Detroit's Black-owned businesses are building back up. They've been doing their thing. So there's a strip on Livernois where it's mostly Black-owned businesses, and it's beautiful. And to an extent, it is exactly what Detroit needs, except for they're containing it. They're making sure that they can only do so much.
Yeah. Small little area.
Absolutely. Hang on one sec. Yes.
Yes, we have. They're saying here, I'm at the delivery place, and they're saying that this delivery doesn't match their number.
Okay.
Contact or send me the contact, give me the number to the person. Take the number to the contact person and straight out.
I'll shoot it right over to you. Just a moment.
All right.
I'm sorry, that's my fiance. He's running a load right now. We started a trucking company.
No worries.
So they set up this thing where if you really wanted to buy a business and develop it, you get this loan. Well, it looks like it's part of the city, but really the lender.
Quicken Loans.
Yeah. So they're funding everything so that they control everything. The other thing that they did, they waited until summer to do work on Livernois, which caused all of the businesses to pretty much have to shut down for a period of time. Those that could were able to switch to online, like the stores. So you could order online. But a lot of the restaurants and things like that died. They were severely impacted. And the root of it was, okay, so you didn't sign up for these loans then, right? So that we have a controlling interest in your business. So we're going to strong arm you. We're going to force you to have to lean on us. That's what they were doing. And it worked. It worked for the most part. And it's unfortunate.
It really is. So let me ask you this. So tell us a little bit about the businesses that you do. How do you make a change in the communities in which you work? And why did you leave Detroit? And I know you talked about the haze, but I mean, is that why you left, or did you leave for better opportunities?
I left to get away, because what I do, I can do anywhere. Hang on one sec. Jay?
Yo, what's up?
Yeah, they're having an issue with, they're saying that the numbers are not matching.
Numbers aren't matching?
Yeah. Can you check into that, give them a ring, and see what's going on with that?
Yeah, I'll check that out right now. Did you see that email we sent you about the load tomorrow?
Yeah. If you can push it back to like 9:30 or 10, he can do it. Only because he'll be coming back from Ohio. See if you can situate that. We got you.
Yeah, I'll make that work for you.
Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
honey. Yeah, I'll call the ship and I'll get him squared away right.
Thanks. Bye. I'm back. So again, I can pretty much do what I do from anywhere. I will be returning to Detroit for a very short period of time so I can learn my metal pouring that we were talking about for my jewelry, and to see my babies, and to do a little bit more mentorship work with Black-owned businesses and the youth. So my goal with the youth was to help them to recognize their gifts so that they can look forward to building for themselves instead of working for somebody. Because we know that's only going to get you so far, right? Well, so I'll be back there the next few months, just for a few months, and then I'll be back to Georgia. So, but I needed to leave. I felt like I needed to leave. I felt a bit suffocated, just seeing everything and trying to explain this to people, and then not being able to get it and things like that. I'm like, I am really wasting my breath. So let me move on. So that's really what that was.
Well, I'm glad you were able to do that. That's good to hear. And as a woman of color doing the kind of work that you do you find any difficulty doing that?
Oh yeah. Construction is difficult for any woman,
Uh-huh.
but especially, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like I guess the general look of women in construction, as they would say, you know. So I don't believe in having to prove myself to anybody. I really don't. You'll see, and you'll do what I require you to do, or you will be removed from the job. That's the bottom line.
Sounds like a very Newton kind of thing I've heard. I
I mean, it just is what it is. I tell people all the time, like, look, I care only that much. Can you see?
Only that much.
Only that. That's all I got. That's
Okay.
all I got.
I got you. I hear you. So
Outside of that, let's get the work done.
let's get our work done. Let's make the money. What is that old saying? If it ain't about dollars, it don't make sense.
It don't make sense.
Absolutely. If it ain't about dollars, it doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna go with that. Um, so how do you see this changing? So did you see the video of the death of Mr. Floyd?
I saw the pictures. I didn't watch the video. I didn't, and I'm not going to. It's a lot of stuff I just don't watch. Again, there's certain things that I don't want to take into myself. So, I saw the images. I read the stories. I saw various people attempting to represent him. There was some white woman who said she was his fiance and he wouldn't want all the rioting. Then there were other people who, were speaking, his family members and things like that, speaking on his behalf. The entire scene
Uh-huh.
was difficult to watch, to even imagine, right? So, and people have asked me, like, how would you have responded had you been there? And it's just like, I already know me. I would have knocked the police officer off of him. I would have. I can't stand by and watch an injustice. I can't stand by and watch somebody be murdered. I can't do it. I don't have that capacity.
Okay.
I'm not recording anything.
I need to stop you right there. Let me see if I can bring you back to reality. We can't afford for you to be dead, so
No.
Unfortunately you might have to just stand back. You have to hold yourself back because you knew all those people that were standing around him talking about, he can't breathe, get off his neck, let's see it, what his pressure, all that stuff. If any of them would have taken it, they also would have been down there on that ground dying too. So no dying, because you're absolutely right. This should not be happening. But unfortunately, you have to use your voice in a different way. Vote, bring in people who are going to do things that are going to make change.
I agree to an extent.
Okay, to an extent.
I'm going to say this, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay, are you sitting down? Okay.
Yep, I'm sitting down.
Okay, look. We have marched and hollered and voted. We've done all of these things. And it is 2020. And you got people claiming they're just now realizing that this is an issue. You got people claiming, well, he should have yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. You got people finding ways to justify the system, okay? No matter what. And the reason that is because there's a significant lack of respect. Why? Because we ask the person who is doing the thing against us to stop doing the thing against us, as opposed to making them stop doing the thing against us by doing what they've done to us against them. One will not understand one another's pain until they experience the same pain. I'm done.
Okay, I'm glad you're done. Thank God for that. Okay. So
I'm sorry.
it's okay. No, you speak your truth. In part, I understand that completely. You can't go back and do 400 plus years of atrocious behavior. You cannot. There are all these conversations about reparation and all those things. And I think that in a lot of ways, if you watch the Charlottesville, Virginia thing where the man ran all over the people with his car, some people are so in inbred with their hate for people of color. I hear people talk about take this country back. It's never been your country. This country belongs to the indigenous people. It's not your country. So I think that in my mind, the way you teach people is what you said when you first start. Meet them where they are, because you're going to have to start educating people a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. You're going to have relationships with people, creating community and having discussions with community. But, we have lost so many powerful, important Black people for reasons that are unrecognizable. And so for Raquel Newton, my twin, to go out there and die because she's trying to make a point or trying to convince you, just be another dead woman, a dead Black woman. Breonna Taylor was sitting in her own home, minding her own business, doing her own thing, and she's dead. The thing that I say, what you have is you have a platform, use your platform. Talk, get out there and talk, get out there, run for office, do things that make sure that your voice is heard. And maybe, and just maybe, because I ask this question all the time too, why is it taking so long for us to have equal rights? Why is it taking so long for us to be paid the same as our male counterparts? Why is it taking so long for us to have equal education? Because in my mind, we still have separate but equal education. If you go to a private school, you have 3 times the learning and opportunities that you have if you go to a public school, especially if you're Black and brown. So I would just say to you, sister, no out there getting the man's knee off himself, but then do things that which you will make a difference. Run for office, use your platform, do things that will do this, because there's no point for us to lose you and lose him. Those people who stand out there in the street were just as frustrated as you were. They were feeling exactly what you were feeling. But they also recognized if they would have intervened, they would have been dead too. Because the way that we understand the police, they are law and order, whatever that means. They are law and order. They bring law to order. That's what their thing is. And you have to recognize, but that's what they are. That's what their moniker is. That's what their things are. And you have to remember one thing. What we know today as the police and law enforcement was the slave patrols, right? Their jobs were to go get runaway slaves. And so there was a mentality about how to do that, right? So at all costs, kill, maim, whatever you have to do to go get them and bring them back. So here we are in 2020, as you said. How much learning do you think we have done? And I'm not talking about we as in all people. I'm talking about law enforcement. How much learning do you think law enforcement has done to rethink that, thought about that? There are so many stories that are so heartbreaking. The Central Park 5, it's just enough to just shred your heart to tears to think that we can destroy young people who are so gifted. Just imagine if President Obama had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. We would not have had this 8 years of a wonderful man. It's easy to destroy Black people. We look for ways to destroy Black people every chance we get. We tear them down completely. I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but a Black football player shot himself in the leg and went to jail. He didn't shoot anybody else. He shot himself. He shot himself, and yet still he went to jail. Okay, so he had a firearm. Maybe he shouldn't have had a firearm where he had a firearm. But he shot himself. He wasn't waving it around, or he wasn't doing whatever it is. And, I hate the word monster because, I watch a lot of crime documentaries. And it's amazing to describe the actions that Black men have done or brown men have done. They're monsters, they're the most evil person ever. Did you not look back at them 400 years where what you had done to black men and women, lynch them, castrate them, take their wives from them, rape them, sell their children? So where is evil? Where is a monster? What is that? Because maybe your definition of monster has changed because it's happening to you. But what have you done for 400 plus years? Here we have in Texas, you create a border, you separate children from their families because they're illegal immigrants. Do you know the trauma that that's going to do to that child? Where is evil and a monster? Because to me, I think the word can be applied to white people way more often and more clearly than black people. Okay, I'm done on my soapbox.
No, but that part, right? That part. It is interesting to me how it is even possible for them not to see themselves. There's a series of books about crime in America. And there are 3 or 4 volumes of this particular book, and all of them are this thick. And they go all the way back from the origination of the Americas, as they chose to call them, right? So it begins with the tyranny of the white folk who got off the boat originally and literally plowed through the indigenous people. The people who were here who called this home, they got off the boat because England decided to send their most wretched, hateful, destructive people to this place. And
You have what you have today.
because that is what this country was birthed from.
Yep. And I think for the white people that are not of hatred mindset, understanding, I think the fact that we have this pandemic and most of us are having to stay home, we don't have to go out, we have to stay home, we get to watch TV. And as we watch TV, we learn more and more about the atrocities that happen to everybody, not just black people, brown people, white people, yellow people, all the atrocities. The books that you mentioned, I read them a long, long time ago, probably while you were still in diapers. But I will say, it was a PBS story that was on TV maybe a few months ago. And they told the story of how white doctors would take these hooks and put them in the socket in newborn black babies' heads to find out why they weren't intelligent, or why they thought they could find out if they could make, knowing that the minute you stab that spot, that child is dead, right? So there is so much there to unpack. To begin to unpack begins bringing back the pain of what it is. And I'll send you this article if you haven't already read it. It's called the DNA, the post-traumatic disorder DNA of black genes. Like how much has happened to us over all of these years that impacted into the gene cell that we now have, the DNA that we now have of trauma over and over and over and over again. And so when you're faced with it, so whether you like Mr. Floyd, in Mr. Floyd's case, now I don't know whether this is true or not, but somebody said he had a counterfeit $20 bill. If he had a counterfeit $200 million bill, I don't see how that could be worse than his life. You have methods to dealing with that, and people are all about defund the police. Do not defund the police, because we would then be a damn society of chaos and our anarchy. But what I do think we ought to do is retrain the police. I think that when a police is called for a domestic violence, a social worker needs to go with him or her. I think when a police is called for a crime, they need to bring, if it's a person under the age of 21, they need to bring whatever you call those people who work for child protective services. They need to bring one of those persons. I think that if the police can learn how to approach people and not to see us as inhumane animals, but people, then I think we have a start. So I'm going to say this to you again, my sister. I want you to go home, close the door, lock the door. Every time you see that there's something bad happening, do not run out there to rescue, because we need you to be alive. Your voice needs to be heard. So write. You said you're an author. Write. Speak. Use your platform. Save your life, because you never know whose life you are going to save.
Yes, ma'am.
Plus, I'm older. I'm the
I know. That's all. I'm not gonna go back and forth with you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so we have
I
5
appreciate that.
Last 5 minutes belongs to you. Say whatever you want to talk about, except for that stuff about going out there and stopping the
Yes,
police.
ma'am. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. Okay. So, all right. This is where we are. As a whole, as a people, we've got to work toward addressing the traumas. And like you said, we're talking about something rooted in DNA. Okay. You still have to address it, because you've got to begin to work on it. And so it comes with acknowledgement first. This is what we're dealing with. And this, because we recognize this as a thing, as an actual thing that is affecting our thought process, our perception, our perspective, our self-belief, all those things, we've got to start there, okay? And then we've got to address the traumas that have been inflicted on us by our own people based on their, so it's a stream of things, okay? And they're all connected. But if we don't start at the seed and then move to the root and then further up to your leaves and your, we're never going to really be able to heal ourselves so that we can become what we were supposed to be before all this nonsense started. We've got to get to the root of it.
Absolutely.
And until we do it, we're just doing at things, right? Because we're really not going to see ourselves for who we are. We're not going to be able to accept our own greatness, because we won't be accountable for the negativity or the negative way that we view ourselves, right? And so that is the root. And this is why I just actually did a post on Facebook, because really that's where I put all my juice at, right?
Stay away from Facebook.
We should note that you cannot say anything negative about the people who majorly control the media, the news, the money. I won't say their names, but you can't, okay? However, they will turn around and create every single way possible to highlight or to develop this negative perspective of us. And this is why I don't watch those slave movies. I'm not watching that. And I never have. Since I was 8, I refuse. I'm not watching it. Not unless you want me to set it off. Period. I can't do it. I can't do it. That is not acceptable. That's not acceptable. You're not going to put this in front of me and try to convince me that that is my story. No, that's his story. Keep that garbage. I've never believed it.
You might be more like Aunt Mary than I am. I thought I was the Aunt Mary of the family, but I swear I think you might be more Aunt Mary than me. I have to go think about this a little bit more, because Aunt Mary she was setting it off everywhere she went. She was setting it off. So, I guess because I've gotten so old, I don't believe in setting it off. My set it off is to go to bed and take a nap. That's my set it off. I don't have no that, but I will say, this chat has been very interesting. I've learned a lot about Detroit that I did not know. Hearing your views, it's been very, very interesting. And we'll do another chat maybe sometime in September. I'm gonna send you some Valium before we have it, so you can calm down. You can calm down before we start chatting. But thank you so much for doing this with me, sister. I really appreciate it. Very, very, very informative, very helpful, and almost cathartic, trying to hear it, except for that part you're going to go in there and try to stop the police. That part, a bit traumatizing, but I get it.
I apologize. I don't want to traumatize you.
Yeah, but I just want you to be alive. I just want you to be on the earth. I just want you to continue to do the good work that you do.
Yes, my love. I will follow your instructions as best I can.
I appreciate it. So we'll chat again in sometime in September. I'll ring you to find out when you have some more free time. And before I hang up, I just want to tell you one thing. So since I was probably about 40, people used to call me skunk because I have this little patch of gray hair right through there. I think you might be the other skunk. I mean, because of that little single patch and I mean, my hair is very salt and pepperish, but right here, I mean, I got this pronounced white patch of gray hair, patch of hair right here.